The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
Now, here's Carl Gallops.
All right, welcome back, America. I am Carl Gallops, and I am in the Oval Office of Gulf Coast Talk Radio. It's so good to have you with us today. Mallory Bardwell, your world-famous producer. We're broadcasting live, 1330 WEBY, Northwest Florida's Talk Radio. However, we call it Northwest Florida's Talk Radio, and that is true. But we do broadcast to portions of 4 states along the Gulf Coast, and that's just by the radio. But, of course, we're attached to the Internet. We're streaming live over the Internet. We stream live over your smartphones. We podcast this show, Freedom Friday. You can get all of that information at carlgallops.com. Plus, we're connected to the world-famous and mega-viral P.P. Simmons news and ministry sites. And a lot of those sites, the Blog Spot is syndicated to 20 different Internet news sites. So all of that is connected to Freedom Friday. We have listeners all over the United States, coast to coast, and around the world, and we're proud of every single one of you. God bless you and welcome to the show. We've got a great show this afternoon, a great lineup. In just a few seconds, I'm bringing on Mike Zullo, lead investigator of the Sheriff Arpaio Obama fraud investigation. Brand new breaking information. You're going to want to hear that. Then, of course, Dr. Mike Shoesmith out of Toronto, Canada, the executive editor of the P.P. Simmons News and Ministry sites. Dr. Grace Vuoto out of Washington, D.C. and Boston, our correspondent from up there. She'll be on. And then in the last portion of the show, Neal Boortz. That's right, the world-famous Neal Boortz will be on the show today. And we're going to talk about his new book and about his life and about his retirement years. And so we'll have a good time with Neal Boortz. So we've got a great show lined up for you. Glad you're here. All right, Mike Zullo, you with us?
I am, Carl. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. It's so good to have you with us. I know we've got mega listeners right now on the Internet and through TuneIn Radio, and we'll have a bunch of them on the other side of the world in the morning, and they're anxious to hear the things that you and I will talk about, mainly you, the things that you will share. But first of all, you've got some breaking news on Sheriff Arpaio has asked you and the Cold Case Posse and the information from that investigation to be involved and to cooperate fully with the Alabama Supreme Court and Judge Roy Moore in an upcoming, it's a civil case, but it's extremely important, and you guys are going to be involved. Sheriff Arpaio has asked you, tell the folks what that case is about. This apparently is the first civil case you guys have been involved in. Tell them why that is and
is sufficient for this matter. So the sheriff has instructed us to cooperate, and we will.
Right, because what you and Sheriff Arpaio are doing with all of these VIPs, and I want you to talk to the folks about the flurry of activity that's been happening with that lately, but what you guys are pressing forward towards a criminal prosecution, a criminal investigation at federal and state level, and when I say state, I mean at the highest rankings of federal and state level, and pursuing a criminal case. And so, as you said, then it's my understanding there's a lot of new information and heavy-duty criminal information that you are reserving for that, correct?
Correct. We have information that without a doubt is irrefutable and proves the document beyond any reasonable doubt was created, man-made creation for the intent to deceive.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, that's and so let's just segue into that. Now, it's also my understanding, and I know P.P. Simmons has been reporting on it a lot. I know I have reported on what I know, but of course you are the expert on this. It's my understanding that there has been a flurry of activities concerning groups of VIPs, individual VIPs, people wanting to meet with you and or Sheriff Arpaio, people who have met with you, people who are making phone calls, people who are making promises. Now, whether they come through on them, we don't know, but people are making big promises, and we've got some big VIPs getting involved in this. Tell the folks what you can about that.
Well, we do, and there's been an increase of activity, as if you, as you just alluded to. There is probably news that your folks will be hearing about in the next few weeks. Regarding that. It's difficult for me to go into any major detail, but I can tell you that the people that are now making inquiries are serious, heavyweight individuals. They wield a lot of power.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a big breakthrough for us.
Yes, it is. And some of these people wield power. Some of them have credentials. Some of them have standing that is irrefutable. Some of them have direct access to media. In other words, when they speak, the media will be there. Some of them have access to the finances that need to be curried. Some of these, one of the groups in particular is very powerful and very influential, and as you present the evidence and information to them, should they endorse what you're doing, and we feel sure they will, then that could be huge, because any individual VIPs that begin to come out, if they had the backing and the endorsement of this particular group, that could be huge. Isn't all of that true as well?
That's true. That's true. It's a turn of events that I guess we've all been hoping would happen.
Yeah.
And it's here now and it's happening.
Yeah.
It's sensitive in nature. The discussions are
Yes.
sensitive in nature.
Yes.
We just want to let the folks know that have been championing this, that this is happening,
Yeah.
and they could rest assured that we're doing our best
Yeah.
to make it happen.
Yeah, okay. Hey, Mike, listen, there's so much more I want to talk about. In a few minutes, we've got a break coming up. But before we do, there's a gentleman on the line that wants to ask a question, and I would love for you to take that call. Will you do that, Mike?
Sure.
Okay, good deal. All right, Chris, welcome to Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups. Thank you so much for being on. Mike Zullo is on the line. Of course, you know that. So, Chris, shoot your question to Mike.
Thank you, Pastor Gallups. Detective Zulu, Chris Fallow in New Orleans. Can administrators, past and present, at Occidental, Columbia, and Harvard Law School, where Obama attended, be compelled by the Chief Justice of the Alabama Supreme Court, Roy Moore, to produce college records relating to Mr. Soetoro or Obama when he attended each of their respective institutions? And if those administrators have all along known that Barry Obama was and is not constitutionally eligible to be president, and that he has in fact fraudulently represented himself as constitutionally eligible in 2 presidential elections, then are not those administrators complicit in the criminal usurpation of the presidency by fraud and guilty of misprision of treason?
All right, thanks, Chris. So the first question that he asked, Mike, and I'm just restating it for you. I know you're smart enough to have gotten all that, but I'm restating it also for our audience, people driving home, et cetera, and just kind of halfway listening. The first part that he asked was, does the Alabama Supreme Court, do you know if they have the authority, the power to subpoena officials from other states, and in particular officials from these colleges and universities where Obama supposedly attended? Does the Alabama Supreme Court have that kind of subpoena power? Do they have jurisdiction in that matter?
Honestly, I don't have the legal answer to that. I do know Congress would have that power.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that I can tell you is he raises an interesting question, because even though these administrators may know, they have an obligation under law not to disclose information about anyone. That's a law.
Mm-hmm.
They can't just go and disclose your records
mm-hmm.
without your permission.
Mm-hmm.
So you run into this problem. What morally would be right, what ethically would be right, is hampered now by statute.
Yeah.
So you can't hold them responsible. They're not of any duty
Yeah.
to divulge this information.
Yeah. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Mike, I know you and I are kind of speculating here, and you are in law enforcement right now. I used to be, and I'm listening to Chris ask this question, and of course I don't have the legal answer to whether or not Alabama Supreme Court can subpoena officials from other states and compel them. I would think they probably do, but I don't know. But you raised an interesting point, and that is about confidentiality and records. But when does national security, when does constitutional travesty trump confidentiality, Mike? And I know we're just being hypothetical, because I don't guess you or I have the legal answer to that. But good gracious, I mean, if I'm a college administrator and I know that the guy in the White House, I know for a fact because I've got his records, that he's not, let's just say that he's not even an American citizen. Now, I don't know that for sure, but let's say that that's what a college administrator knows. When does his duty to the Constitution and to the security of our nation trump keeping records confidential?
Well, and I don't know, but another part of that could be there may be policies at their place of employment that they have no right to even access those records unless by official request.
Yeah.
So we don't know.
Yeah.
And just take a look at Benghazi with the 4 whistleblowers. They're being threatened with prison of 20 years apiece if they come forward and just tell the truth.
Yeah.
So it's the way our laws have been written for purposes of concealment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it raises the moral dilemma.
Yes, it surely does. Mike, we're going to take a quick time out. When we come back, I'm going to ask you about the difference between fact and truth. You and I have been having a lot of discussions about that, and I think our listeners need to hear this. This is extremely important as we move forward in the Obama fraud case. Is that okay with you, Mike?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, folks, you're listening to Freedom Friday with Carl Gallups. Mike Zullo is our guest this afternoon.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.